A 2 to the p factorial experiment is an inferential statistic technique that uses a p number of factors, each at 2 levels, that allows one to look at as many factors and their effects with each other. There are 2 types of factorial experiments: full factorial experiments and fractional factorial experiments. Here are some examples of factorial designs that are usually seen in engineering experiments. We have a 2 to the 2 factorial design with 4 runs and 2 to the 3 factorial design with 8 runs. Some of the strengths of the experiment is that it takes less time to conduct a factorial experiment than using one factor at a time, and it reveals the connection and effects that the factors have with each other. Some of the weaknesses are that the larger the values the factor is, the more unorganized the experiment can be, and the more runs there are, the more money and time it takes to run the simulation. When this happens, it's best to use the fractional factorial experiment as opposed to the full factorial experiment. Engineers use the 2-level factorial experiment to study the effects on the factors within the experiment they are conducting. In order for them to do this, they will need to change the levels of the factors. In the article, Experimental Design and Reservoir Engineering, the engineers are studying the effects of permeability and porosity on the oil production of a reservoir. They look at 2 levels of permeability and 2 levels of porosity. And by using the full factorial experiment, they design a chart that shows the relation of each factor and level. In order to run the simulation, they will need to create as many combinations of the 2 to the p to find the effects of the permeability and porosity on the oil. The engineer comes up with 4 factors: type of well completion, type of well completion string, and type of injection fluid. Each factor then has 2 levels each. The engineers first look at the type of well and the type of injection fluid. The well type is either horizontal or vertical, and the injection fluid is either acid injection or water. The engineer then tries to look at 3 factors at a time, adding type of well completion to the design. Well completion has 2 levels, with tubing and without tubing. The engineer then goes further, testing all 4 factors. Usually, most engineers will use a fractional factorial experiment, as you can see why. Today, it becomes hard to keep up with and becomes hard to visualize.